Daniel Carter had been alone on the mining outpost for 2 years, and he had grown used to the silence that filled every corner of the station echo. 7 was a small facility built on a barren moon at the edge of human space, and Daniel was the only person assigned to monitor the automated mining equipment that dug precious metals from the gray rock beneath his feet. Every day was the same routine of checking systems and filing reports and eating meals in solitude while staring out at the endless stars beyond his window on this particular night. He finished his work and completed his security check and confirmed that every airlock was sealed tight. Against the vacuum outside, he brushed his teeth and changed into his sleeping clothes and climbed into his narrow bed in the small quarters that had become his entire world's sleep. Came quickly as it always did, because there was nothing else to do on Echo 7. Once the lights went down, Daniel dreamed of Earth and green forests and the sound of other human voices. But those dreams faded when something pulled him back toward consciousness. Felt warmth beside him, which was impossible because he lived alone, and there was no one else on this moon for millions of kilometers in any direction. His eyes opened slowly and adjusted to the dim emergency lighting that always glowed during the night cycle. A woman lay beside him on the bed, and she was watching him with eyes that glowed like red embers in the darkness. Daniel screamed and threw himself backward so hard that he fell off the bed and crashed onto the cold metal floor. The woman sat up slowly and tilted her head as she observed his panic with what seemed like genuine curiosity. She was tall and slender, with skin so pale it seemed to glow faintly in the low light, and her hair was silver like moonlight and fell past her shoulders in waves. Features were beautiful in a way that felt almost painful to look at, and her red eyes never blinked as she studied him. But what made Daniel's heart pound in his chest were the fangs that showed when she parted her lips to speak. "You are afraid," she said in a voice that was smooth and cold, like water flowing over ancient stone. "But I mean you no harm human." Daniel scrambled to his feet and pressed his back against the wall, and his hands searched desperately for anything he could use as a weapon. "Who are you?" he demanded in a voice that shook despite his efforts to sound brave. "And how did you get in here?" The woman rose from the bed with a grace that no human could match, and she stood at least a head taller than Daniel. "I am Queen Valathira of House Nocturnus," she said with a slight bow of her head, "and I entered through your northern airlock when my ship crashed on the surface of this moon. That airlock has a security code," Daniel said as his mind raced to understand what was happening. "And sensors. That should have warned me." Valathira smiled, and her fangs caught the light and made Daniel's blood run cold. "Your technology is impressive for such a young species," she said as she took a step toward him. "But my people mastered the stars when you still lived in caves and feared the darkness." Daniel grabbed a heavy wrench from his tool belt that hung on the wall and held it in front of him like a sword. "Stay back," he warned her, "and tell me what you want." Valathira stopped and raised her hands to show she held no weapon, and her expression shifted from amusement to something that looked almost like desperation. "I am dying," she admitted, and for the first time Daniel noticed the dark stains on her elegant clothing that could only be blood. "And my ship is destroyed, and my enemies are hunting me across the stars." She gestured to the bed where Daniel now saw spots of that same dark blood on his sheets. "I came inside seeking shelter and warmth," she continued, "because the cold was pulling me toward death, and your dwelling was the only structure on this world." Daniel kept the wrench raised, but his fear began to mix with confusion and against his better judgment a small amount of sympathy. "You could have woken me up," he said, "instead of climbing into my bed like some kind of nightmare." Valathira laughed softly, and the sound was both beautiful and terrifying. "I intended to leave before you woke," she said, "but something unexpected happened while I lay beside you." She pointed to his left hand, and Daniel looked down to see a small cut on his palm that he had gotten earlier while repairing a valve. "You were injured," Valathira said, and her red eyes seemed to glow brighter, "and a drop of your blood touched my lips while you slept." Daniel felt sick at the thought, but he forced himself to keep listening. "My people feed on the life essence of other beings," Valathira explained, "and we have traveled the galaxy for thousands of years and tasted the blood of 100 different species." She stepped closer, and this time Daniel did not retreat because something in her voice held him. "Frozen in place, human blood is different," she whispered with wonder and hunger mixed in her tone. "And that single drop healed wounds that should have killed me and made me stronger than I have felt in centuries." Daniel stared at her and tried to process what she was telling him. "So my blood is like medicine to you?" he asked slowly. "It is more than medicine," Valathira said, and she reached out to touch his face with fingers that were cold as ice. "And your species carries something in your veins that we have never encountered before." She pulled her hand back, and her expression became serious and almost fearful. "My people believed humans were primitive and not worth our attention," she said. "But we were wrong, and everything we thought we knew about your kind was a lie." Daniel lowered the wrench slightly as he began to understand the weight of what she was saying. "What happens now?" he asked. Valathira turned toward the window and stared out at the stars with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. "My brother Korvath tried to kill me because he wants my throne," she said, "and when he learns that I survived, he will come for me." She looked back at Daniel with an expression that mixed regret with determination. "And when he discovers what human blood can do," she said quietly, "he will not just come for me." Daniel felt cold spread through his chest as he understood what she meant. "He will come for all of us." Daniel finished. Valathira nodded slowly. "Your species stands at a crossroads," she said, "and the choice you make in the coming days will determine whether humanity rises to join the great powers of the galaxy or falls beneath the hunger of my kind." Daniel set down the wrench and looked at this strange and terrifying creature who had invaded his home and turned his quiet life upside down. "Then I guess we better figure out what to do," he said, "because I did not survive 2 years alone on this rock just to become someone's dinner." Valathira smiled again, but this time it seemed almost warm. "You are brave for a human," she said, "and perhaps that bravery is exactly what we both need to survive what comes next." Outside the window, the stars continued to shine in cold silence, but somewhere among them enemies were already searching for the queen, who had escaped their grasp, and the lonely human who had accidentally become her only hope. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation as Daniel worked to turn his peaceful mining station into a death trap. He programmed the mining drones to dig trenches around the main structure and filled those trenches with explosive charges that could be detonated. Remetella Valathira watched him work with growing admiration as she began to understand just how dangerous humans could be when pushed into a corner. "Your people fight with tools instead of claws," she observed, "and you turn everything around you into a weapon." Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his datapad. "We had to," he explained, "because Earth was trying to kill us from the day we first crawled out of the ocean." He pulled up a diagram of the station on his screen. "Okay, here is the plan," he said, "and I need you to tell me if it is completely insane." Valathira leaned in to study the diagram. "Show me," she said. Daniel pointed to the northern approach. "The only flat ground for landing ships is here," he explained. "So that is where they will touch down." He traced a line from the landing zone to the station. "They will have to cross open ground to reach us," he continued, "and that ground is now filled with enough explosives to crack this moon in half." Valathira nodded slowly. "You intend to destroy them before they reach the door," she said. "Some of them," Daniel agreed, "but the explosives will not." "Get everyone." He pointed to a series of tunnels that ran beneath the station. "The survivors will try to flank us through the mining tunnels," he said. But I have programmed the drones to collapse those tunnels on command. And what about those who make it through despite your traps? Valathira asked. Daniel looked at her with a grim smile. That is where you come in, he said. Because you told me that human blood made you stronger than ever. Valathira's eyes glowed brighter as she understood. You want me to hunt them? She said with something like hunger in her voice. I want you to show them why they should have stayed home. Daniel replied. The communication terminal beeped, and Lisa's voice came through. Daniel, the first reached Admiral Reyes. She reported, and he is sending a patrol squadron your way, but they are 12 hours out. We only have 6 before the Sanguine arrive. Daniel said, I know. Lisa replied with frustration. So you need to hold out until the fleet gets there. We will manage. Daniel said with more confidence than he felt. Be careful, Lisa said quietly, and try not to die, because I would hate to lose my best surveyor. The communication ended and Daniel turned to Valathira. Are you ready? He asked. She placed her cold hand on his shoulder. I was born ready, she said, but I must warn you that Korvath may come himself, and he is far more powerful than I am. Then we better make sure he does not get close. Daniel said. 3 hours. Later, the first Sanguine dropship descended through the thin atmosphere of the moon. Daniel watched through his external cameras as it landed on the flat ground exactly where he predicted. Here they come, he muttered. The dropship's doors opened and a dozen Sanguine soldiers emerged. They were tall and pale like Valathira, but their faces were twisted with cruelty and hunger. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb the light, and they carried weapons that glowed with strange energy. Wait for it, Daniel said to himself as he watched them advance toward the station. The Sanguine soldiers moved with inhuman speed, but they were following the obvious path that Daniel had left open for them. Just a little closer, he whispered. The lead soldier stepped onto the marked zone, and Daniel pressed the detonation button. The explosion was massive and silent in the vacuum of the moon rock, and debris flew in all directions as the ground erupted beneath the advancing soldiers. When the dust cleared, half of them were gone, and the survivors were scattered and disoriented. Phase 1 complete, Daniel said with grim satisfaction. But more dropships were landing now, and fresh soldiers poured onto the surface. They are heading for the tunnels, Valathira reported from her position near the main airlock. Let them, Daniel said as he watched the dots on his screen move into the underground passages. He waited until they were deep inside the tunnels before he triggered the second set of charges. The ground shook as entire sections of tunnel collapsed and buried the soldiers beneath tons of rock. That is twice now, Daniel said, but there are still more coming. The surviving Sanguine had learned from the deaths of their comrades. They moved more carefully now and spread out to avoid the obvious kill zones. Some of them found the secondary tunnels that Daniel had not collapsed, and they began making their way toward the station. I count 8 of them coming through the east tunnel, Daniel reported. I see them, Valathira said, and her voice had changed to something cold and predatory. She moved through the airlock and into the tunnels with speed that Daniel could barely follow on his cameras. The first soldier never saw her coming. Valathira struck from the shadows, and her claws tore through his armor like paper. She drained him in seconds and moved to the next target. Before his body hit the ground, Daniel watched in horrified fascination as Valathira danced through the tunnel like a ghost of death. She was faster and stronger than the other Sanguine, and they fell before her one by one. But then a voice echoed through the station's communication system. Sister, the voice said with cold amusement. I know you are here. Valathira froze in the tunnel, and her face twisted with hatred. Korvath, she snarled. Did you really think you could escape me? Korvath continued. And did you think a primitive human and some explosives could stop the might of my fleet? Daniel saw a new figure appear on his camera. Korvath was taller than Valathira and broader in the shoulders. His eyes glowed with a deeper red, and power seemed to radiate from him like heat. From afar he walked across the blasted landscape without fear, and the surviving soldiers fell in behind him. "Come out, sister," Corvath called, "and bring your human pet with you so I can see what all the fuss is about." Daniel grabbed his emergency kit and headed for the airlock. Valethera appeared beside him with blood on her claws. "You cannot face him," she warned, "because he is too powerful." "I am not going to face him," Daniel said, "but I need to get him into position." He showed her his datapad. "I saved the biggest charges for last," he explained, "and if I can lure him to the landing zone, I can bury him under a mountain. He will kill you before you can trigger them." Valethera protested. Daniel smiled sadly. "And make sure my death means something," he said. Before she could stop him, he ran through the airlock and out onto the surface. Corvath turned to face him, and a cruel smile spread across his alien features. "So this is the human," Corvath said as he advanced toward Daniel. "And this is the creature whose blood makes my sister think she can challenge me." Daniel backed away toward the landing zone where the final charges waited. "You should not have come here," Daniel said. Corvath laughed. "And why is that little human?" he asked. Daniel reached the center of the landing zone and stopped. "Because humans do not know when to quit," he said, and pressed the detonator. The explosion was the biggest yet, and it threw Daniel backward like a rag doll, felt bones break, and fire tear through his body as he slammed into the ground. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was tons of rock falling on Corvath and the sound of Valethera screaming his name. The next morning, Daniel sat at his communication terminal with Valethera standing behind him like a pale shadow that refused to leave. He had spent the entire night listening to her explain the Sanguine Empire and their history and their hunger that had driven them across the stars for millennia now. He needed to contact his supervisor and report what had happened, even though he knew she would think he had lost his mind. Colonial Mining Authority, this is Echo 7. Requesting priority communication with Supervisor Morgan, Daniel said into the microphone. The terminal crackled with static for several seconds before a familiar voice came through the speaker. "Daniel, this is Lisa," his supervisor said with obvious concern in her tone. "You never call during off hours, so what is wrong?" Daniel took a deep breath and tried to figure out how to explain the impossible situation he found himself in. "Lisa, I need you to listen carefully," he said, "because something happened last night that changes everything we know about alien life." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Go ahead," Lisa said slowly. "An alien ship crashed on the surface near my station," Daniel explained. "And the pilot survived and found her way inside, and she is standing right behind me as I speak." Lisa laughed nervously through the speaker. "Daniel, you have been alone out there for 2 years," she said gently. "And isolation can do strange things to the human mind, so maybe you should take a break and get some rest." "She is real, Lisa," Daniel insisted. "And she says her people are called the Sanguine, and they have been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years." "Daniel, please," Lisa began, but Valethera stepped forward and leaned toward the microphone. "Your subordinate speaks the truth," Valethera said in her cold, elegant voice. "And I am Queen Valethera of House Nocturnus, and I require assistance from your government." The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. "That voice," Lisa finally said with shock replacing her skepticism, "is not human." "No," Valethera agreed. "And I am far older than your entire civilization," Daniel heard Lisa take several quick breaths as she processed what was happening. "Okay," Lisa said with forced calm. "Assuming this is real, and I'm not having some kind of breakdown at my desk, then what exactly do you need from us?" Valethera glanced at Daniel before she answered. "Sanctuary," she said, "and an alliance that could benefit both our peoples." "Why would we ally with you?" Lisa asked. "And what do you offer in return?" Valethera's expression grew dark and serious. "Because my brother is coming with a fleet of warships," she said. And if he captures me, he will learn a secret that will doom your entire species. Lisa's voice became sharp and focused like a soldier receiving battlefield orders. What secret? She demanded. Valethra looked at Daniel, and he saw something like guilt in her red eyes. Human blood possesses properties unlike any species we have encountered, Valethra explained. And a single drop healed wounds that should have killed me and made me stronger than I have been in centuries. What does that mean for us? Lisa asked with fear creeping into her voice. It means that if my brother Corvath learns what human blood can do, Valethra said slowly, he will not just come for me. She paused and let the weight of her next words settle over them. He will bring the entire Sanguine Empire to your doorstep. She continued, and your people will become nothing more than livestock to feed our hunger forever. The communication line went quiet as Lisa absorbed the terrible implications. Daniel spoke up to fill the silence. She could have taken what she needed from me by force, he said. But she chose to explain and ask for help instead. And I think that means something. It means she needs us more than we need her, Lisa replied bluntly. Perhaps, Valethra admitted. But I also believe that cooperation serves both our interests better than conflict. Lisa sighed heavily through the speaker. I have to report this to Colonial Command, she said. And once I do, there is no going back, and this becomes bigger than all of us. I understand, Valethra said. But I must warn you that my brother has spies throughout the galaxy, and the moment word of my survival spreads, he will know exactly where to find me. Then we better move fast, Lisa said with determination, replacing her fear. And I will contact Admiral Reyes directly, because this is too important for normal channels. Thank you, Daniel said with genuine relief. Do not thank me yet, Lisa replied, because I have no idea how Command will react to news that vampires are real and they want our blood. The communication ended and Daniel turned to face Valethra. What happens now? He asked. Valethra walked to the window and stared out at the gray landscape of the barren moon. Now we wait, she said. And we prepare for the possibility that your people will decide I am too dangerous to help. Daniel joined her at the window and looked at the distant stars that suddenly seemed much more threatening than before. Tell me about your brother, he said, and why he wants you dead. Valethra's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Corvath believes our people have grown weak, she said, and he wants to return to the old ways when we conquered worlds and drained them dry before moving on to the next. And you disagree. Daniel guessed. I have seen what that path leads to, Valethra said quietly. And it brings only destruction and eventually extinction as we run out of prey. She turned to face Daniel with something like hope in her ancient eyes. I believe we can find another way, she said. And perhaps humans can help us discover it. Daniel nodded slowly as he began to understand. You want to change your people, he said. I want us to survive, Valethra corrected him. And survival requires adaptation, which your species understands better than any other. Before Daniel could respond, an alarm began blaring. Throughout the station, he ran to his sensor console and felt his stomach drop when he saw the readings. 3 ships just dropped out of faster than light travel. At the edge of the system, he reported. With his voice tight with fear, Valethra appeared beside him, and her face became a mask of cold fury. Corvath, she said. And he found me faster than I thought possible. Daniel checked the calculations on his screen. At their current speed, they will reach us in 6 hours. He said. Valethra turned away from the console and her expression shifted from anger to resignation. I should surrender myself, she said, because there is no reason for you to die for my sake. Daniel grabbed her arm and forced her to look at him. I have read reports about the Sanguine, he said firmly, and I know what your brother will do to you if you surrender. And what would you have me do? Valathira asked with genuine confusion. Because we cannot fight 3 warships with a mining station. Daniel smiled, and for the first time since he met her, he saw surprise on the alien queen's face. You said humans are good at adapting. He reminded her. So let me show you what that means. He pulled up the station's inventory on his console. I have enough explosives to crack open a mountain, he said. And a dozen mining drones and a transport shuttle that might just be crazy enough to work. Valathira studied his face with new interest. You would fight for me? She asked, even knowing what I am. Daniel shrugged. I have been alone on this rock for 2 years, he said. And you are the first person who made me feel like I matter, even if you are a vampire queen from outer space. Valathira laughed, and the sound was warmer than before. You are strange, Daniel Carter, she said. I get that a lot, he replied. Now help me figure out how to blow up your brother's soldiers before they blow up us. Daniel woke to the sound of beeping machines and the feeling of cold. Fingers wrapped around his hand. Every part of his body hurt and breathing felt like swallowing broken glass. He opened his eyes slowly and found himself in the medical bay of his station. Valathira sat beside him with her red eyes filled with an emotion he had not seen in them before. Fear. You are awake, she said with relief flooding her voice. And I thought I had lost you. Daniel tried to speak, but only a weak croak came out. Do not try to talk, Valathira said quickly. Because your injuries were severe, and you need to rest. Daniel ignored her and forced the words out anyway. Korvath. He managed to ask. Valathira's expression darkened. He survived, she admitted. But barely, and he retreated to his ships with what remained of his forces. Daniel closed his eyes and felt disappointment wash over him. I failed, he whispered. No, Valathira said firmly. Because you bought us time, and that is more than anyone could have asked. She squeezed his hand gently. But there is something I must tell you, she continued. And I hope you will forgive me for what I have done. Daniel opened his eyes and saw guilt written across her beautiful features. You were dying, Valathira explained slowly. And your human medicine was not enough to save you. She looked away as if ashamed to meet his gaze. I gave you my blood, she admitted, because it was the only way to keep you alive. Daniel processed this information through the haze of pain and medication. Your blood, he repeated. Yes, Valathira said. And by sharing my blood with you, I have created a bond between us. Daniel felt something strange in the back of his. A presence that had not been there before, is like standing in a room with someone even when his eyes were closed. He could sense them without seeing them. I can feel you, he said with wonder. Valathira nodded. And I can feel you, she replied. And this bond will last for the rest of your life. What does that mean? Daniel Valathira finally looked at him again. You will heal faster than normal humans, she explained. And you will age more slowly, and you will always know when I am near. She paused before continuing. Among my people, such a bond is sacred, she said quietly. And it is not something to be given lightly. Daniel thought about what she was telling him. Are we married? Yes, Valathira laughed, and the sound was surprised and genuine. It is more complicated than that, she said with amusement. But if you want to use human terms, then yes, it is similar. Daniel should have been angry that she made such a choice without asking him. But he found that he was not. I would have chosen to live, he said. So thank you for saving me. Valathira's eyes widened with surprise. You are not upset, she asked. You could have let me die, Daniel pointed out. But instead, you shared something precious and sacred to save a human you barely know. He managed a weak smile. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are, he said before. Valathira could respond. Alarms began blaring. Throughout the station, multiple ships detected, the computer announced. Valathira tensed and prepared for another fight, but Daniel recognized the signal patterns on the nearby monitor. "It is okay," he said with relief. "Because those are human ships." Valathira relaxed slightly, but suspicion remained in her eyes. "You're Admiral Reyes," she guessed. "Probably." Daniel agreed. The communication terminal crackled to life. "Echo 7, this is the Colonial Patrol Ship Sentinel," a voice announced. "And we are responding to a distress call from this location." Daniel reached for the microphone with shaking hands. "Sentinel, this is Daniel Carter," he responded. "And I am glad to hear your voice. We are detecting debris from several alien vessels in orbit," the voice continued. "And we also see evidence of significant combat on the surface. It has been a rough day." Daniel admitted the Sentinel's crew must have relayed the information quickly, because within minutes a different voice came through the speaker. "This is Admiral Tony Reyes," the new voice said with authority. "And I want to know exactly what happened here." Daniel looked at Valathira. "How much do we tell him?" he asked quietly. "Everything," Valathira decided. "Because secrets will only make things worse." Over the next hour, Daniel and Valathira explained the situation to Admiral Reyes. They told him about the Sanguine Empire and Corvat's assassination attempt and the strange power that human blood held over Valathira's species. When they finished, there was a long silence. "You expect me to believe that an alien vampire queen crashed into a mining station and now wants to be friends?" Reyes finally said with obvious skepticism. "I know how it sounds," Daniel replied. "But I have seen her fight her own people to protect me. She could be manipulating you." Reyes pointed out. Valathira stepped toward the microphone. "Admiral Reyes," she said calmly, "I understand your suspicion because my people have not always been kind to the species we encounter." "That is an understatement," Reyes replied coldly. "Because I have lost good people to sanguine raiders, and I grieve for those losses," Valathira said. "But I am not my brother, and I do not wish to see humanity harvested like cattle." She took a breath, even though her species did not need to breathe. "I offer an alliance," she continued, "and in exchange for sanctuary, I will provide technology and star charts and intelligence about threats you do not even know exist." Reyes was quiet for a moment. "And what do you want in return?" he asked. "Willing blood donors," Valathira said honestly. "Because I will not take what is not freely given." "That is a big ask," Reyes said. "It is," Valathira agreed. "But consider the alternative." She let the weight of her words settle before continuing. "My brother will return," she said. "And next time he will bring more ships and more soldiers and the knowledge of what human blood can do." "Is that a threat?" Reyes demanded. "It is a warning," Valathira replied. "Because if Corvath spreads that knowledge throughout the Sanguine Empire, then every hungry mouth in the galaxy will turn toward your worlds." Daniel spoke up. "Admiral, she saved my life multiple times," he said. "And she could have killed me and taken what she needed, but she chose to help instead." "You are not exactly an unbiased witness," Reyes pointed out. "Because the report says she bonded with you. That happened after I was injured saving her," Daniel explained. "And she bonded with me to keep me alive, not to control me." Another long pause followed. "I am sending a shuttle to bring you both to Colonial Command," Reyes finally said, "where you will face a formal hearing before the Council." "We accept," Valathira said. "This is not a request," Reyes clarified. "I understand," Valathira replied with dignity. "And I will submit to your judgment because trust must begin somewhere." The communication ended and Daniel looked at Valathira. "That went better than I expected," he said. Valathira smiled, but worry lurked behind her eyes. "The hard part has not begun yet," she said. "Because convincing one admiral is different from convincing an entire civilization." Daniel reached out and took her cold hand in his. "Whatever happens," he said, "we face it together." Valathira looked at their joined hands and something warm flickered in her red eyes. "Together," she agreed. The council chamber on New Geneva was filled with the most powerful humans in the colonial government, admirals and senators and scientists, sat in a curved row of seats that looked down upon Daniel and Valathira like judges preparing to deliver a verdict. 3 weeks had passed since the battle on Echo 7, and Daniel's wounds had healed far faster than any doctor could explain. Now he stood beside an alien vampire queen and waited to learn if humanity would embrace her or destroy her. "Queen Valathira of House Nocturnus," the council chairman announced, "you stand before this assembly to answer for crimes committed by your species against humanity." Valathira accepted the accusation with a slight bow of her head. "I acknowledge the harm my people have caused," she said clearly, "and I offer no excuses for their actions." "Then why should we not hand you over to your brother?" one senator demanded, "and rid ourselves of this threat?" "Because my brother will return regardless of what you do with me," Valathira replied calmly. "And the only question is whether you face him alone or with allies." Admiral Reyes leaned forward in his seat. "Tell them what you told me," he said. "About the alliance you propose." Valathira stepped forward and addressed the entire chamber. "I offered the sanguine technology that will advance your civilization by centuries," she began, "and star charts that reveal paths through space you have not yet discovered, and intelligence about species that could help or harm your expansion. And in return," the chairman prompted. "In return, I ask for sanctuary," Valathira said, "and access to willing human blood donors who choose freely to participate." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "You want us to feed you," a senator said with disgust. "I want us to help each other," Valathira corrected, "because human blood can be synthesized to some degree and direct feeding would be minimal and always voluntary." A scientist in the back row raised her hand. "I have analyzed the blood samples from the bonded human," she announced, "and the properties are remarkable." She held up a datapad with complex charts. "Human blood evolved on a death world," she explained, "where radiation and disease and predators forced our cells to develop unprecedented repair mechanisms." The scientist looked at Valathira with scientific fascination. "To the sanguine, our blood is like medicine and fuel combined," she continued, "and we could leverage this into a partnership that benefits both species." The chairman considered this information. "Even if we agreed," he said slowly, "there is still the matter of this brother who wants to conquer us." As if summoned by his words, an alarm began blaring throughout the building. "Report!" Reyes barked into his communicator. A panicked voice responded immediately. "Admiral, we have a massive fleet dropping out of faster than light travel," the voice said. "And they are broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through." Reyes, Ordered Corvus' face appeared on the chamber's main screen. He looked battered from his previous defeat, but his eyes burned with hatred and hunger. "Humans of the colonial government," Corvus announced with cruel pleasure. "I am Prince Corvus of the Sanguine Empire, and I have come for what belongs to me." He smiled and his fangs gleamed in the light. "Surrender my sister, and I will only take half of your population as payment for the insult she has caused." He continued, "And refuse and I will drain every last one of you dry." The transmission ended and chaos erupted in the chamber. "How many ships?" Reyes demanded. 47 warships, Admiral," came the response. "And more are arriving every minute." The chairman turned to Valathira with accusation in his eyes. "You brought this upon us," he said. "Corvath would have come eventually," Valathira replied, "because he has always hungered for conquest, and human blood simply gave him a reason to act sooner." Daniel stepped forward and spoke for the first time. "We can beat him," he said with confidence that surprised even himself. "How?" Reyes asked. "Because we have fewer than 20 ships in this system." Valathira has loyalists among the Sanguine houses, Daniel explained. And they hate Korvath as much as we do. He looked at Valathira through their bond and felt her determination mingling with his own. If we can prove that alliance with humanity is possible, he continued, they might be convinced to support her claim to leadership. Valathira nodded. My brother rules through fear, she said. But fear alone cannot maintain power forever. She turned to address the council directly. Let me broadcast to my people, she requested. And let me show them that humans are not prey to be hunted, but partners to be respected. The chairman exchanged looks with the other council members. Do it, Reyes said before anyone could object. Because we have nothing to lose at this point. Technicians worked quickly to establish a broadcast connection within minutes. Valathira's face appeared on screens throughout the Sanguine fleet. Sons and daughters of the Sanguine Empire, she announced. I am Queen Valathira of House Nocturnus, and I speak to you not as a fugitive, but as your rightful ruler. She gestured to Daniel beside her. This human saved my life, she said. And he fought beside me against my brother's assassins, and he showed me that strength does not require cruelty. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. Korvath promises you conquest and endless feeding, she said. But I promise you something better. She paused to let her words sink in. I promise you survival, she declared. Because the old ways lead only to extinction as we consume everything around us and leave nothing but ash. Humanity offers us a new path, she continued, where we can feed without destroying and grow without conquering. The response came faster than anyone expected. One Sanguine ship broke formation and moved to defend New Geneva then. Another and another within minutes. A third of Korvath's fleet had defected to Valathira's side. Korvath's face appeared on screen again, and his fury was terrible too. Behold, traitors, he screamed, and I will destroy you all. But his words lost their power as more ships abandoned him. Battle that followed was brutal, but brief human tactics combined with Sanguine speed created a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had. Seeing Daniel coordinated the combined fleet through his bond with Valathira, and their connection allowed them to communicate faster than any radio signal. Korvath's remaining loyalists fell one by one until only his flagship remained. Valathira herself boarded the vessel and faced her brother in the end. Their battle lasted only minutes, strengthened by her bond with Daniel and fueled by the loyalty of her followers. Valathira defeated Korvath and took him prisoner. When she returned to New Geneva, the council chamber erupted in celebration. This changes everything, the chairman admitted as he approached Valathira. And I believe we have much to discuss about this alliance. Valathira smiled graciously. I look forward to building something new together, she said weeks later. Daniel stood on the observation deck of New Geneva and watched the stars. Valathira appeared beside him silently, as she always did. What are you thinking about? She asked Daniel. Laughed softly. I am thinking about how I went to sleep alone on mining outpost, he said, and woke up as the consort of an alien vampire queen. Valathira smiled and moved closer to him. Do you regret it? She asked. Daniel took her cold hand in his warm one. Not for a second, he said. Valathira leaned her head against his shoulder. Humans have a gift for adapting to impossible situations, she observed. We have to, Daniel replied, because the universe keeps throwing them at us. They stood together in comfortable silence and watched the ships of two species flying side by side. A new era had begun, and it started with a lonely human who refused to let fear control his choices. So what happens now? Daniel Valathira squeezed his hand. Now we build a future, she said. Together, and somewhere among the stars that future waited for them full of challenges and wonders and the promise that some bonds could bridge any distance, even the distance between a human and a vampire queen.